Yes, Guyana to the world.
Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building.
She is a beauty, beautiful Guyana, with wonderful people all over this country.
Globespan believes every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diaspora and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana. As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adapt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
With many flavor, 6 different people blended together. Raise your flag high in unity, we're family with one destiny. Raise your flag high in unity.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to Globespan 24/7, owned and operated by Mr. Nuhar Singh. Joining us tonight is Mr. Devin Bassoon, as usual, as the technical operator. We are discussing a current topic. Everyone has been discussing it for over a week now, as pertains to Guyana. We are discussing tariff. The American Trump-imposed tariff on Guyana, 38%. And so we'll discuss tonight what is a tariff and the consequences, effects of the tariff on Guyana. Joining us to interrogate the subject matter tonight are 2 very, very prominent characters. Both are experts in their field. Mr. Colin Haynes is a CEO. He's also a consultant of a variety of businesses, including in the fields of health, economics, and business. And we have Mike Singh, very, very well known. I don't think he needs any introduction. He has appeared in this program several times. Mike has traveled internationally, worked for a long time in the Middle East, has traveled toward Asia, has strong connections in the United States government, and he is a specialist in security, very well versed, articulated in economics and business. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Gentlemen, the 2 of you, Mike Singh, as well as Colin Haynes, thank you for joining us this evening. Let's begin right away. Let's talk about tariff. What is a tariff? Or do you want me to, let me define a tariff. A tariff is a tax or a duty on goods coming into a country. So, for example, if you import cars in the United States, and they put a 10% tariff. If the price of the car is $10,000, you have to pay a duty of $1,000 just for the car to be in the United States. And they have to in order to get to of the vehicle. Some countries have tariff for a variety of reasons. Generally speaking, America discourages tariffs and prefers free trade. Free trade basically means that a country can export and import freely without having to worry about tariff, this tax duty on imports into the country. Some countries have very, very minimal tariff, and this is just very, very minimal tariff. But over the last couple of months, Mr. Trump has taken the decision that he is going to increase tariff because he feels or felt that the United States is being cheated by other countries that take advantage of the United States. And he feels that if he imposes a tariff equivalent to or higher than those countries that are charging tariff on American exports, hopefully that will change behavior. And another reason he's doing it is that he claims or feels that businesses in the United States have migrated to other countries where labor is cheap, the goods are made cheaper, and they're brought to the United States. So he wants to bring back all of these goods that are made overseas, especially electronic goods and cars and so on. And you want to encourage major corporations abroad that are selling their vehicles in the United States to come and make them in the United States so that there will be no tariff. Gentlemen, do I have it right? Would you like to expand on this concept of tariff? Let's begin with Colin Haynes.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Vishnu, it's good to see Mike as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you've got it right. So it's a tax, right? A tariff, it's a tax where goods that are coming into a country attract a certain tax on it, right? Which means that now places a burden on those that are buying the product. And then, as you know, how the capitalistic society works or business works is that if I get a burden of tax, then what I'm going to do is that now becomes part of my business. It becomes part of my initial capital investment. And so, in order for me to recuperate that cost, then I would have to raise the price. And so, the reason why I think today there is this big um, issue, and as you see, the markets have reacted to it, is because the tariffs are going to have a great effect. If any other place in the world, I think, is going to have a large effect, it's going to be the United States. All right. We're the nation that trades with probably every nation in the world, except the ones we don't like. Maybe it's like 5 or 10 of them. Right. So then the other 190 something countries, we're intrinsically connected with them. Also, one of the things will happen as well is the United States will find themselves in what's called the native industries, like the auto industry and so forth. They're going to have problems there because we, as a country, while we're a great nation, while we produce a lot of things, a lot of what we've been doing recently is outsourcing our stuff. We don't make semiconductors. We don't make all the parts for a vehicle. Yes, American cars are assembled in America, in Detroit or Ohio, but it's not all American brands, right? American components. So components are coming from Japan and China and Singapore or Vietnam or so forth. Even the garment, the clothes we wear as well. It's not American. It's either coming from Bangladesh, China, Vietnam, Malaysia, or so forth. So those will attract a price. So now you go to the market and if the price of oil was $4, now you'll see the price of oil could be $5 because that extra tariff now will have a reciprocating price on the consumer's pockets.
Okay, so what Colin is saying is that when a importer imports whatever product and there is a tariff, he doesn't carry the tariff. The tariff is being shifted to the consumers, and so economics is called shifting the burden.
Correct.
Yeah. So while while Trump may feel that he's making the goods not attractive to Americans, certain goods the Americans can do without, and certain goods, even with the tariff, are still significantly cheaper than American goods. So, and there are no substitutes for it. So, generally speaking, when there is a tariff, the consumer pays the tariff, not necessarily the importer or the producer. Mike Singh, anything to add about understanding the concept of tariff?
Well, good evening, and as the gentleman rightly explained what a tariff is, but let me shift gears. The United States, which has been the pillar, the co-creator, the architect of the World Trade Organization, which was the successor to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, and of course, that came out of the United Nations Trade and Development Agency, UNCTAD. United States has always been a champion of free trade, but we have never been the country that enjoyed fair trade. The majority of our trading partners have had a free ride for far too long. A lot of our industries were shifted to China in the 80s as part of this so-called great engagement between Chu Enlai and Deng Xiaoping, and then US President Nixon from the 70s. So they felt, yes, we can engage China, we can do business with them, we can peddle capitalism, and it's going to bring democracy. But that has not worked out. The Chinese have done a great job stealing our intellectual capital. They've literally brought this country in terms of its intellectual capital and what have you to the brink of an abyss. No American company or individual can own any property in China. The concept of private ownership of a plant, a silicon wafer factory, a steel building company, a shipbuilding, it does not exist in China. Everything is owned by the state. China Power and Light, Huawei, ZTE, these are just some of the biggest culprits of the theft of United States intellectual property. 90 days, President Donald Trump is giving everyone, with the exception of China, to get your house in order. That includes Guyana. Guyana is being given a reprieve. And my wise counsel for Guyana is that get together your cabinet, your trade gurus, your finance minister, even your newly hired consultant, who is a very respected voice, Carlos Trujillo, and look at how you can convince the US to remove that 38% permanently. And I like to tell you, for everyone's benefit, Nissan, Mazda, Toyota, BMW, Kia, Subaru, Hyundai, and Mercedes-Benz, they all have US manufacturing plants, most of them in the South. And what Guyana should do is a sign of good faith, immediately signal to the United States Trade Representative's office that we are going to remove, Guyana is willing to remove all duties, taxes, luxury taxes, levies, you name it, on United States auto exports, light trucks, and consequentially spare parts and other things that would be required for the maintenance of these vehicles. Abolish it right away to show the United States you're not going to be putting these ridiculous taxes to stem the flow of US exports to Guyana. It will make goods available and affordable to the Guyanese masses. But the Guyana Revenue Authority, as someone said to me, is a medieval torture institution. And they need immediate and urgent reform from top down because they don't seem to be in sync with what Trump 2.0 is all about. Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, as Mike correctly pointed out, there was a tariff imposed of 38% on goods coming from Guyana, with some exceptions. Oil and gas are accepted, and in addition, a few more products. But as of today, the president, Donald Trump, has suspended that 38% for giving Guyanese and other countries a 90-day reprieve. Only China have a reprieve. So China is still stuck, I think, with, is it 105%? Or,
125 now is actually, yeah.
So there's a tit for tat between China and the United States. And even though it doesn't involve us, the prices will overall impact on Guyana, regardless of which country gets the tariff, because ultimately goods go up everywhere, and therefore Guyana will have to pay more if it's importing goods from China and so forth. Colin Haynes,
Mhm.
effects of the tax of this tariff on Guyana.
So I want to say that I heard Mike Singh saying that we need to reduce our taxes, right? Um, and while I do agree with him, Guyana is a smaller nation, right? I do believe we need to have tax reform. A lot of United States have large industries. They have a very progressive, booming corporate tax and tax mechanisms. But I think that if you look at the revenue stream for Guyana, a lot of that stems from trade, right? It stems from duties. Now, the effect directly for the local persons. So, for instance, recently I was on a show and we were talking about their sugar rice farmers, livestock farmers. Um, it's going to have an effect on them as well, right? Because when we send our rice, we send our sugar, we send seafood as well to United States. It's going to attract that tax, so it's going to be more expensive for them to do trade, and so this presents a real big problem for Guyanese people. Now, the thing is, also, I want to make mention the manufacturing industry in Guyana also will stand to suffer a lot because, again, in Guyana, we're not really making a lot of, we're making a lot of raw materials. The cost of production in Guyana of things are also way higher. And that is something that we also have to attract as well. So the government has to find a way to reduce the costs, right? On production, right? Whether it's energy, we've talked about the energy matrix, we've talked about the energy complex. I mean, it's been almost 20 years we're talking about this now, and we can get, for 800,000 people, we can get reliable, efficient, and cost-effective energy in Guyana. We have one field project called Amelia Hydro Falls. We have a possibility of another field projects coming up again in the gas to energy, just because the fact is not that the project of themselves are not good. They're very good projects. They mean well, but everything we do, we feel like if you're gonna fly a plane, you don't need a pilot. If you're gonna do surgery, you can just give it to a vet, a mechanic to do surgery. Everything has to be rooted in scientifical. We have to listen to the experts. You have some politicians who think that they're an expert for everything. I've never met somebody in the world like that. We have advisors. The Trump, he has a lot of advisors. Every president in the world has advisors. So I think that we've got to look at the effect that this is causing on different industries. And when this happens, we already have runaway inflation in Guyana. We already have hyperinflation. We already have a system where people are spending way more money for goods and services because of the booming oil industry than they're making, right? The average Guyanese makes $100,000, but have to live like $300,000. Look at the GDP per capita, PPP, right? It is way higher, and now with tariffs and these things, it seems to be a burden. Now, if we were thinking progressively, we would first go to CARICOM. We would make CARICOM work for what it's worth. I've been a big critic of CARICOM because I don't think it works for what it's worth. There should be no duty. There should be no tariffs on goods coming or going between Barbados, Trinidad, Guyana, Jamaica, Barbados, Antigua, and so forth, right? So we've got to address that. And I heard Mia Motley's made a very compassionate speech, calling for some of the same things that a guy, I mean, 50 years ago was calling about. You could love him or hate him. I'm just talking the facts, right? The facts is the facts, right? So we've got to figure a way to do that. We also have to figure a way to do what's best interest for Guyana of itself, which is uh, give manufacturing a break, give startup businesses tax breaks. Don't make it difficult for them, because those are your heart and your engine of your economy. And if you're highly taxing them, then you're not going to get it right. Now, I'm not against foreign companies, but if foreign companies like the Chinese, like Oh My, and all these folks are coming into Guyana, they should pay their fair share of taxes too. But what we're having now, Mike and Vishnu, is you're having the local manufacturer is being penalized with heavy taxes in your own country, and then you have the foreigners who are just walking in and getting all the tax breaks they are. I mean, how good is this? How progressive is this for a country? It just can't work.
Okay, very, very valid point. Um, Let me point out that one of the reasons for this tariff of 38% is that President Trump claims that Guyana has a surplus in trade
Hmm.
balance with America of, I don't know, $3-4 billion. At
Hmm.
the same time, Trump claimed, well, not claims, he said there will be no tariff on gas and oil imported from Guyana. Now, most of the trade that Guyana conducts is in oil, not gas. We're not exporting gases yet. So
Hmm.
the surplus that Guyana experiences is in the field of oil. Therefore, there should not be any tariff whatsoever on Guyanese imports if one were to really factor in the amount of oil
Hmm.
that plays a role in the trade surplus. So what Trump has done is to take the difference between the import and export, and then perform a ratio over the
Right.
exports, and then he takes half of that. So in Guyana case, it turns out to be 76%, and that is how he came up with the 38%. And he has done that pretty much with every country on which he imposed a tariff. So if
Hmm.
we were to make that case that Mr. Trump, I think you made an error, it will and that you should re-examine this, then perhaps we can have an ease of the burden. Um, Mike Singh also pointed out that Guyana has a lobbying firm which is being paid $50,000 monthly plus 15,000 in expenses and additional expenses as well. 65,000. That lobby should go and work with Trump and say, "Look, Mr. Trump, I think you made a mistake with regards to Guyana. They don't have a trade surplus. In fact, I think Guyana has a trade imbalance with the United States if we exclude oil." Mike Singh?
Well, as Colin pointed out, the cost is going to be passed on to the consumer. Guyana's intrinsic problem, like the rest of the Caribbean, lies in their hopeless embrace of John Maynard Keynes' model of the state being the arbiter, the big hand, big government, the big employer. It's time that they decouple from that. It is time the leaders of CARICOM, from, and I will call them out, from Bara Jagdeo to Irfan Ali to Mia Motley, they all got a copy of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged and read it. Start to embrace a philosophy of my teacher and guru, Milton Friedman. Supply side economics. Free up the economy and let market forces dictate who the winner will be. Why are you, a country, the fastest growing economy? And this is a question for the Honorable Ashni Singh. Why are you presiding over the fastest growing economy in the world? You're having so much inflow of the royalties, the oil and gas. You're making tons of pesa. You're building lots of roads and infrastructure. But yet you continue to hold on to squeezing taxes and duties out of things like motor cars, vehicles, These things are not luxuries, they're everyday necessity and a form of mobility. Unless the population can afford some decent form of transportation to get from point A to point B, then it's only the 1% are going to be going down Heroes Highway and enjoying the concussion and the highway to hell, like Secretary of State Rubio did about the concussions. Only the 1% could enjoy the concussions. Open up the economy, remove the tariffs, like Desmond Hoyt did in 1985. He said if you can find your own foreign exchange, you're welcome to import your minibus. You're welcome to import your dal, your potato. I always reflect on Hoyt. He was not afraid of making decisions. The government of Guyana today is in a far more advantageous position than Hoyt was in 1985. They have got a golden wicket to bat on, and you're still squeezing people at the medieval torture chamber. Why? This is impeding progress. Only a certain class of people can enjoy mobility. Well, I'm going to tell you, if the policies don't change fast enough, people are going to be heading to the airport and leaving. And all those roads are going to become white elephants. Remove the luxury taxes, the import duties, and all of these draconian and oppressive taxes you have stifling free enterprise. Democracy comes about and free enterprise functions best when we have an atmosphere that rewards personal initiative. People don't want to be fed. Give them an opportunity. They don't want aid. They need trade. They don't want a handout like a hamper. They need a hand up, and they don't need pity. They need an opportunity. And as long as the Guyana Revenue Authority and the government of Guyana continue down this Keynesian, this John Maynard Keynes philosophy, we are still going to be victims of arrested development. Thank you.
So Colin, he's condemning John Keynes' model for development, state-driven development, and of course Guyana has been involved in state-driven development since this. So it may or may not work, but most certainly they should free up the economy. Why should someone have to pay 250% duty on a
vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, it makes
I use one too,
and I use one. Yeah. So
I don't. One of the things I think that we have to move away from is identifying, and it's good to have models, right? I'm totally for that, but I believe that we need to find an indigenous model that works for a nation, right? And sometimes these models that are existing, they're oppressive, as Mike says. They're colonialistic. If you look at our education system, you see some of those same models are ingrained, and we're not going anywhere. Now, I wanted to make the point that there's a difference between the trade deficit that we're seeing, which is about $3.8 billion, right? So Trump is saying that there's $3.8 billion that the United States is not benefiting on, because 1.5 billion is only coming to Guyana and being taxed, and 5.3 is going to United States. So he's now saying that for that difference in trade, we're going to somewhat level the playing field by creating a tax, right? And in some cases, I don't agree with that, because I think if there's a trade deficit, then we can address having more trade come in to make up for the difference. But I don't feel like just taxing what's already there is almost you're taxing us for being very successful, for trading more with other countries. But I'd like to say as well that there is some genius in that as well, because what I think he's doing more than anything else is trying to bring people to the table, because his main interest is that the United States is losing. It's not getting more of its products out. So there's a saturation of the Chinese and all these other companies. Now, one of the things we have to do in a more sustainable and a strategic, like I said, is invest in local industries, is break down all the barriers that are there, give local businesses tax breaks, reduce any obstacle to startup a cost. There is an obstacle with GRA, there's an obstacle with NIS. Reduce also, we have neighbors. We have a powerhouse in Brazil that's right next door. Let's finish the road to Brazil. Let's not take 5 years to build 20 miles of a road that can be beneficial to the exchange of goods and services. Reduce the tariff on Brazilian items and Suriname items. Build road, build bridges, connect the nation. And like I said, I cannot be more overly critical on CARICOM. Why today we're still paying between 5 and 20% of duty for CARICOM items? It should be zero, it should be free. We're a Caribbean community, we're a single market economy. Why is the single market not working for the people of Guyana? And then why Guyana is not standing up like the other nations, to ask for fair trade? Why is it that now all of a sudden there's this big attraction and love for Guyana, but it's not translating into better economic outcomes? The other thing I'd like to say is that I believe there is something inherently wrong with a country that the leadership doesn't see the benefit in having experts who actually have been proven and know and look at the data as well. We have to look at the data, we have to look at best practices, and we have to craft a strategy from that. You cannot go down this road of developing a nation by somewhat of a fly by night. You wake up tomorrow morning, you say it's 200,000, and you wake up the next morning, you say it's 100,000. We can't develop a nation like that. It has to be developed on strong foundations of training and education, research driven, quality assurance, evaluations, and these kind of things. These things matter. And this is why countries like China, countries like Guyana, like the United States and Russia, and all these big countries, Japan and them, they've built successful industries, not because of politicians who have just, decided to flex political strength at a cost of nothing, to be honest, because you're flexing your strength, but I mean, you're very weak as a nation. So I think it's time for us to move away from this current model that we have and embrace a model that is more instructive, informative, and makes sense, common sense.
I'm sure you would agree, Mike Singh, because that's what you have been arguing for the last half an hour. Anything to add to that?
Yes, Guyana needs to have the president needs to convene a council of economic advisors, similar to what we've got here in the United States. Guyana needs to have reputable, credible, fact-based, data-driven economic research think tanks. The Center for International Private Enterprise in Washington, D.C., which was a result of who I ascribe as the greatest leader and greatest president in American history, Ronald Reagan, other than Lincoln. Reagan was important in establishing the National Endowment for Humanity, and out of that grew the International Republican Institute, the National Democratic Institute, and the Center for International Private Enterprise, which played a pivotal role in the collapse of the former evil empire, the Soviet Union, and the advocacy of free enterprise, market-oriented, free market economic models. And if you take a look at them, you need something like that. We don't have any, may I dare say, credible, fact-driven, data-driven, scientific-driven economic think tank that can bring an informed and fact-based perspective to decision making. What you have is a whole bunch of hocus pocus, pull it out of the hat, random application of theories and ideas that can't withstand anything in a court of rational economic thought. I've been affiliated with the Hoover Institution because of my free market thinking. I'm an unapologetic purveyor of free markets. I will even go as far as to privatize the prisons in Guyana because the prisoners need to earn their keep. There's no free lunch. You need that type of council of economic advisors staffed and run, and on the council, not the president's uncle's tailor, his mamu's shoemaker. No, you want persons of the caliber of Christopher Ram, the other brilliant people, captains of industry like Komal Samaru, the late Yesu Prasad. These are the kind of persons, they have experience running businesses. They know what it takes. Don't take some fossilized relic telling me about Karl Marx. You're not going to get anywhere. I saw the president speaking at the Berkeley Innovation Forum and talking here, there, and everywhere by AI. But can the president himself define in just one paragraph what is AI and then give me a schematic breakdown of how AI works? He goes to NVIDIA's headquarters. Those are very busy people. And he talks about equity, a global equity in AI. AI is all about intellectual capital. NVIDIA is not the Salvation Army or the Scott Mission. You have to pay. They're running a business. And secondly, Guyana is nowhere near 10% ready to implement an AI data center. You need tons of power to run those GPUs, which are crunching about 70,000 algorithms per second. So I come from this field and I'm aghast, and my friends in the leadership of NVIDIA are laughing to fury. You've got to have subject matter experts guiding you. As Stanley Ming, we all know, once said to me, and I repeated exactly, said, Mike, Guyana is a country where we have a problem for every solution. It's a place. Everyone is an expert there, Right. It reminds me of a seven-handed Hindu deity. I mean, how could you possibly be an expert in everything? You can try to be a practitioner at least 2 or 3 things that make sense and are consequential or attendant upon your core practice or core knowledge base. But you can't come to me and say, Mike Singh, I want you to perform neurosurgery tomorrow. I'm not going to invoke AI and mess up someone's head. So all of a sudden, everyone is an expert, right? So you've got more chiefs than Indians in the place. So we need informed decision making fueled by practitioners, proven leaders in their field, and you need to leave politics at the door and deal with harsh, cold facts. We need a fact-driven decision-making process.
I agree.
Well said. So just to recap, Mr. Mike Singh said we need free enterprise. I don't think anyone will dispute that. I think Guyana is heading in that direction. We need a council on economic advisors, just like in the United States. I think that's a bad advice. In fact, it's an excellent advice, but unfortunately, everyone, as he said, is an expert in Guyana. You talk to anybody there, they're an expert. If they didn't even study medicine, they're an expert in medicine. Expert in heart surgery, even if they have not even if they know where the heart is. There's an expert in that. So yes, we do need to leave politics out if we are going to get this economy to grow better, for there to be real development in Guyana. Colin Haynes,
Yeah, I just want to touch back on the tariffs and oil.
please.
Now, I think that what is unfortunate about these tariffs is that Trump is saying that, we're gonna tariff your rice, your sugar, we will tariff your seafood, we'll tariff your fruits and so forth, but we're not gonna tariff your oil because the oil is an American company bringing the oil back, right? So it creates an imbalance for the oil contract. And I think that the great thing about this tariff is maybe it opens the door where we could renegotiate the contract. It's again data driven. So one, the current side is saying that with the oil contract, the sanctity of contract should be respected. But understand that 5 years ago, we didn't know the amount of oil that we have now. 5 years ago, we didn't have a tariff right in place. That changes all of this. Matter of fact, we didn't have a tariff 2 months ago. So this changes the complexity right now of the trade that's happening between these two nations. And I think, like I said, just think that this might be the door that we can open up to do that. On another note, you were talking about, I know we said earlier about hiring a lobbyist, right? And hoping that the lobby would actually be working for Guyana's best interests, which I don't suspect it would be. I've worked for a lobby firm before. Just like ExxonMobil, I think these entities, they're working for the best interest of them and their shareholders, and particularly their country as well. They're not Guyanese. They don't have an obligation to Guyana. And so what I would like to also suggest is that we are also in the business of also tariffing our own people. Look, we want to put $900 million tariff on Mohammed. Like it or not, it's a tariff. It is a tariff. It's one where you've got a tax system, right? That says if you bought a house and the house was $20 million, you bought a house maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and now you finish buying the house, you finish paying your bill and everything, and then the mortgage company comes back and said, "Hey, guess what? Do you see that $20 million? Actually, no, it's actually $60 million. So you owe us $40 million." You see, that is the kind of thing that Mike and I are talking about. You just can't run a nation on that. You can't run a nation on this very archaic political, where you like somebody today and it's okay to give them a free pass, and then you hate them tomorrow and you change the price of something. You look at nations like that and you can't really see us getting anywhere. And so that's why I endorse this my idea of an economic council of real economists, people who have done stuff in business, like you talked about Clifford Reese, the guy from Gafoor, Kamal Singh. I know that I've heard discussions that even DDL right now, is busily working, because these tariffs mean a lot for DDL, because now DDL, is a large exporter of rum outside of Guyana in the American markets, whether it's bottled rum as we see or bulk rum. So it is creating a lot of anxiety, and it's creating a lot of hard work and stuff for businesses. And what I think we have to do at least at a country level, there need to be a diplomatic engagement with the United States. We need to find out, why are these tariffs happening? We need to, get an understanding of the rationale behind it. We also need to leverage CARICOM and other regional allies, right? And to form a united front in advocating for fair trade practices. We also need to engage multilateral institutions like the WTO. We've not been hearing a thing about the World Trade Organization, right? To challenge these unjustified tariffs under international trade law.
We also need to engage the diaspora here in the United States for them to
Correct. I
Yes.
agree.
Yeah.
express, as well as the Trump administration. Now, half of the
Right.
administration here did support Mr. Trump, so therefore they will be able to have some influence. Mike,
Mhm.
I want to engage you on this. Colin Haynes said that this trade surplus experienced by Guyana uh, comes from oil largely. And so he's saying that perhaps this provides an avenue for revisiting the contract. What do you think about that? I mean, would you be supportive of something like that? That considering the sanctity of the contract?
Look, all things are on the table. Nothing is written in stone.
Mhm.
Bottom line, get at Council of Economic Advisors. Get a fair composition of people locally. If I might add, it's not Komal Singh, it's Komal Samaru. Komal Singh is a pipe man doing
Sorry.
aggregate work and haulage of stuff
My
and dredging
apologies.
for the folks at with the gas to shore. Um, he's got a lay down yard. Komal Samaru, someone I respect. He started at DDL at the age of 19.
Mhm.
He came up the ranks. He's from the school of hard knocks. He knows what it takes. You did mention Clifford Reese, but in the diaspora, persons like ourselves, I think I'm the most globally networked NETWORKED Guyanese. I've lived and worked, visited 90 plus countries, including Afghanistan.
Mhm.
We should have the council, and I'm available as you are to speak with the president. I'm not joining the PPP by any stretch of the imagination. Let me put it out there. But I'd be happy to work in the interests of Guyana. And we get like minded Guyanese who can, as they say, cut the mustard, so to speak, in the Irish brogue, and bring them in. I can go to my friend and mentor Steve Forbes, the billionaire, and we get Steve Forbes to chair the council. A name like Steve Forbes chairing the Council of Economic Advisors for the world's fastest growing economy will
Right.
immediately get the attention of not only Secretary of State Rubio, but President Trump, J.D. Vance, Navarro, and all of them. Because what they're all running on is a lot of Steve Forbes' ideas and Ronald Reagan's ideas. If you looked at the photo of Reagan in President Trump's office, he's a huge fan of the Gipper, like myself. But you cannot put party cronies and sycophants and mendicants on the Council of Economic Advisors. You must have persons with a proven track record. Brings me back to a lifelong friend of mine, Keith Bernard, who many people may or may not know. He's worked with the Banking Commission of New York. He's distinguished himself at the NYU Stern School of Business. That's a guy you engage in financial matters. He's not a soup drinker or an ideologue. He's a professional. He's going to tell you where to get off. You have other Guyanese who've worked at Goldman Sachs. They understand what it takes to invest. Don't put individuals who are in the departure lounge, for the lack of a better word, to run a nation's sovereign wealth fund. A nation's sovereign wealth fund requires a certain degree of financial sophistication, nuance, awareness of global investment trends. Get individuals who've spent time with Mubadala or the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, like I have done, to guide you where you put your money to get the best rate of return. Get individuals who can pick up the phone and make things happen, not individuals who are going through several layers of bureaucracy. No, you need people who can move the speedometer needle and not kicking the tin can down the road. Regrettably, Guyana has been a victim of vicissitude, and it's time that they got rid of all of this leftist impediments that they've imprisoned themselves with and move forward in the 21st century. The new wealth is not oil, it's data. and being
Mhm.
able to harness data and do it quickly and, you know, in a manner. Data is money. If you have the information, you've got the edge. And you
Right.
want sovereign wealth fund? Well, I've got lots of Jewish friends who can help you get great rate of returns. If the United Arab Emirates is reaching out to the Jewish boys on Wall Street to run their sovereign wealth fund, why doesn't Guyana do it? Guyana can do great things, but Guyana is living in a self-imposed prison. It
Mhm.
is afraid of change. The leaders of Guyana reminds me of the people that constructed the prisons of the Gulag Archipelago that was immortalized in Alexander Solzhenitsyn timeless epic.
Mm.
Why? In this day and age, where information is instantaneous, where social media has completely redefined and rendered obsolete borders, you're still taxing your people to the hilt. This is the fastest growing economy, but regrettably, the folks who are making the decisions seem to be stuck in the era of locomotives and they're not ready for high noon. Thank you.
But Mike, in all fairness, Jagdeo and Irfan are not influenced by left wing politics anymore. I mean, they're shifting away. Yes, in the back of their head, they may still have some nationalistic ideas and pursuits and so on. But for the major part, they're moving away. But you're right. You are absolutely right that the country is stuck in the past, and we need to move forward in the modern economy of 2025. And let's get with it. Let's get rid of some of these archaic rules and regulations and tariff and put tariff of 250% on certain items. That makes absolutely no sense. Colin Haynes.
You know, a leopard doesn't change its stripes. So while we have this notion that the Jagdeo cabal just automatically changed from Marxist Leninists yesterday to capitalists today, I cannot believe that because I don't see that in the fabric of society. Politicians have a way of trying to adapt or, sort of weave their way into something because it is what's happening. But if you look at the foundation of that country, it is still run on family, friends, and favorites. All right. It's not being run as Mike and you and I have been talking about on people who are competent, who think, look, I mean, just a side topic, they're implementing an electronic medical records, which is we're talking about AI, and they're not using experts in the field. I've done it for 13 years. I've done it all over the world. And like Mike, you and I, we can get an opportunity to help the nation that we love. We can help, the Germans, the Japanese, folks in Guam. We can help, the Koreans, the Singaporeans. These people I've been gracious and happy to help. But you cannot help your homeland. And this is not about Colin or Mike. This is about there's at least another 1,000 people out there who can say the same thing, right? We're not utilizing that, and that comes from that, oppressive, close knitted, circling political regime. Winston Churchill, who I am a fan of, he says that a nation that tries to tax itself, it's like sitting in a bucket and trying to pull yourself up. It doesn't work, right? You ever try that? Sit in a bucket, try to pull yourself up. It doesn't work. So I believe that, it's time for us to have tax reform, like I was saying. We need to use the GRA not as a scapegoat when we don't like people to expose their tax information, to oppress the population with high taxes, but actually to look at data of where we make reduced taxes. We're talking about tariffs here. We're talking about trade. We were on a path not for where we are today as a nation. As a nation, we can go back and look. I wasn't born then, but I've read and I've talked to elders, and they tell us we had a peanut factory, we had glass factory. Mike, Vishnu, you guys can think with that. We had
Cigarette.
We used to make
Matter
clay bricks, right? We used to make
wait, wait.
garments, right? We used to
Mhm.
make garments. We used to make textile. We used to make peanuts. We had a peanut factory. We had all of these industries with no oil, with no big amount of revenues, with no large technological largest that exists now in the world. But we made things work back then, right? Guyana probably would have been one of the first nations in the world to have a wooden part of a vehicle in automotive. It was the wooden chassis that drove the trucks, made of green art wood from the forest of Guyana, right? Again, for where we are now, we should never been. We had all of these waterfalls, Mucka Mucka, Chamachamari, Tiger Falls, and so forth. And for some reason today, 60 years afterwards, we can't. And you know what the main reason is? Leadership. We have leaders in Guyana, but we don't have leadership, right? Leadership is different. I've read a book that changed my life forever and helped me look differently about the kind of leader I aspire to be. Not leader, but leadership I aspire to exercise. And it's a book written by Professor Ronald Heifetz. Might you probably know Ronald Heifetz. You can't talk about leadership without talking about him. He's from Harvard. And he says, look, leaders are not the main drivers of leadership. They're not. It's the people you actually give the work to, right? And he also says that when there is dissent, you're not to, tell them that they owe many taxes and try to take this away and take that away. You need to listen to those people because in the theory of complexity in business, it tells you that when complex systems get into these kind of complex issues and there is complexity, it emerges with ideas, it emerges with new breath of life, fresh air, new ideas. And this is what builds nations. The reason why, people, we always have this debate in Guyana about Trump. And if you like him or hate him, the United States will always be a very good nation, will be a great nation, regardless who is president, because this nation knows about institutions. I work for major health institutions, and regardless of who is president or regardless of who is in power, these institutions work because they're able to research, they're able to find, they're able to use data to drive decision making. When you talk to the CEOs and the board members that I've had the opportunity to talk with,
Mhm.
it is not driven by political who we like and who we don't like. If a CEO sees that you can utilize Colin in this field or that, this is where it's being done. So I
Mhm.
just want to use that as a sideline that in all of these talks in tariff, the foundation and the fabric of our nation needs to change to incorporate these kind of realities.
Okay, so Mike, let's close off. So we have been discussing tariff. If you could just give us a brief summary of the effects of tariff on Guyana and what's the latest development about the proposed tariff uh, imposed by President Trump last week.
But as you know, it's a 90 days reprieve, except for China. So Guyana can get its house in order with the other errant members of the global trading community. Getting to Mr. Colin there, my other hero is Lee Kuan Yew. And he
Yes.
always said, never surround yourself with yes men or women. You're going to have problems. Guyana, it's follow the leader. It's a politics of the cult persona and the politics of caudilismo. All these chaps need to do is don some uniforms of the Third Reich and they'll fit right in. Nobody, as Fauci likes to say, and I'm no fan of Fauci, must believe in the science. Nobody's believing in the data. So you have decisions that are being made that are not scientific, holistic. There's no empirical evidence, but decisions are being made. And, data is being pulled out left, right, and center. And, you're just rolling the dice, you're throwing the darts, hoping it's going to stick. Frankly, most people are just going through the motions and flying by the seat of their pants.
Mm.
And you cannot run a country, an economy, or forge a nation that can withstand global shocks, and be resilient. I recommend the leaders of Guyana to get a copy of what Sheikh Zayed, one of my heroes, Baba Zayed, the founder of the United Arab Emirates, how he did it. And the book is titled From Sand to Silicon, where they went from living in the desert to building the first hospital in Abu Dhabi in 1972 to now sending a mission to Mars. The United Arab Emirates is a great example because Abu Dhabi is positioning itself to become the AI center of the universe. We are building a second nuclear reactor in Abu Dhabi. We've got Al Barak. We've got over 25 gigawatts of solar power besides natural gas. So Guyana could take a page from what they have done. Guyana is producing more oil than many, or will soon, and many other places. But oil is not going to last forever. We're going to move towards renewable. And let me talk about a very important man in Guyana's history. Whatever his shortcomings, I benefited from free education under Forbes Burnham. I remember as a little boy, he was talking about plant your own crops, every piece, every parapet, reduce, he said reuse and recycle. And he was talking about renewable energy since the 70s. They may not like Forbes Burnham, but he was ahead of his time. He remains to this day one of the greatest third world leaders. The whole concept of the new global south was because of Forbes Burnham, Indira Gandhi, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, and the late Sir Sridhar Ramphal. And I will also add Michael Manley in there. These were the people who really fought for the new, for the globe, for the emerging economies, the third world. Today, you know, one of my heroes is Thomas Sankara, and I've been to Burkina Faso. I've walked the Sahara in Niger and Mali. And when I see what Traore is doing, you know, I said on the Globespan chat, who wants to go with me to visit Burkina Faso, Niger? I haven't had anyone respond, but I'm going because I'm proud to see that they're unshackling themselves from the relics of French colonialism and they're standing up. Guyana is in a better position than these places, but those people there in those countries that have left ECOWAS and told France take a hike, they're standing up for what's theirs. How could Niger, which produces so much uranium, be in darkness? That's just not right. We have darkness in Guyana too. Mental darkness abounds everywhere. And you know, it's important to recognize when we all die, what are we taking with us? I don't know if the leaders of Guyana are going to be placed in pyramids and they're preparing for their afterlife with this insatiable appetite to acquire money, to, you know, stuff themselves to fury. You know, what measures a man if you have it all and 90% or 99% of the people are suffering? They're dealing with hunger, they're dealing with social inequity, economic injustice. That's not a sustainable model. Sooner or later, if you live in a castle, the rot will come from underneath and take you down. If it's not young Azruddin Mohammed today, it's going to be another person who is going to arise and address the social inequity. I have no brief for Mohammed. I am no pals of theirs, but you know, look at the reality. The young guy has become an overnight rock star.
Yeah.
He is driving the agenda. He
Right.
was able to go into Linden and call for peace. Why wasn't President Ali there first?
Mm-hmm.
A
So,
true
Mike,
leader takes control of the situation at any hour of the night or day. And he gets there and he addresses the problems from the front, not from the back. We don't want persons being Monday morning quarterbacks. We want leaders who are going to roll up their sleeves, jump in there, and lead from the front. Thank you,
well,
Vishnu. And the
thank
government of Guyana is on
that,
notice to drop those taxes on American auto exports, remove the luxury taxes, and all these oppressive taxes, because if you don't, the 38% will come back. It would affect the price of Gilbaca, Rooster's coconut water, and all these other things. And I've received so many calls from so many members of the Guyanese business community when they heard I was going to be on the program. And they said, Mike, we can't talk. We're afraid. The GRA and the government is going to pressure us. But can you fight for us? Can you advocate our pains and our concerns? Some of these people were near tears on the phone with me because they're going to face financial ruin. And the government of Guyana has a moral obligation to its people to fight for what's right. And if it means relaxing, removing the duties on these vehicles and components and parts, it will help Guyana in the long run. You won't have problems of persons driving these used vehicles, the steering ends giving away, and there's some assaulting through the air like Evel Knievel. Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I'm afraid that will be the final word. We are out of time now. It's been a great discussion, very, very articulate position, excellent presentations from Colin Haynes and Mike Singh. Ladies and gentlemen, do support Globespan 24/7, owned and operated by Mr. Nohar Singh. You may check our website, globespan247.com. Thank you and good night.